Hey doctors, thanks for joining us and Dr. Gare today for this GVL presentation. Hey Dr. Gare.
Hey Penny, how's it going?
Hey, so I am truly excited to do this webinar with you. I know that we've done so many together over the
Yeah,
years.
right.
I know I was your rep when I first sold you your very first zirconia laser. And
Yeah,
I always tell doctors,
2004. Yeah.
a long time ago, and I always tell doctors too that don't be surprised if you end up buying more lasers. And how many lasers do you now own?
I've got the GVL. I have my base station, which are all rented out right now. One got
Mhm.
rented for 3 months, so I've got that, and then I've got the FX 635 and the Zerona the Z6. So I've got pretty much just about everything you can get
Yeah.
as a chiropractor. Yeah.
Yeah, I always kind of use you as an example because doctors that simply just get started with a single laser. And I do
Right.
have a lot of doctors that have started with the GVL. So we'll kind of talk about that. So
That's nice. Yeah.
the reason that we put this webinar together is there's been a lot of excitement about the GVL. Even though Arconia has been making lasers for 28 years, they were the first company in the world to actually gain FDA clearance on a low-level laser, and now they currently own 21 FDA clearances in the world on low-level lasers. So they can continue to claim they're the most researched, safest, effective laser in the
Right.
marketplace because we've got the research. I've been with Zirconia for almost 20 years. I've worked in the chiropractic industry for almost 30 years, and I had a unique opportunity to own my own clinic. That's my background, and I added an Zirconia laser to my practice. So that's the reason I'm here and have continued to be here for about 20 years. And we'll kind of get more into some of the marketing. We just wanted to make this more of a roundtable
Yeah.
conversation. I know, Dr. Gare, you were one of the lead agents, right,
Right.
of
Yes.
the FDA clearance. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that and what you saw during those and what you thought about
Yeah.
it when you're like, this green laser, what does this green laser do?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing because when they invited me to be one of the researchers, they told me it's going to be a ton of work. I had no idea what they meant by how much work it really was. And I think that's important for all the doctors to understand is we talk about the research that we do. And it's funny because I see other laser companies who don't do any research actually try to knock Arconia for doing research. And that's the funny thing about it. It makes zero sense, but that's what they do. So when we did these studies, we had to have patients who had a minimum of chronic pain of at least 5 years of duration. We actually had the patients had an average of 8 years of duration on there, and they had to have loss of range of motion plus pain in order to qualify for the study. And when we did the study, we did objective measurements for the range of motion for their neck and also for their upper extremities, so that we had that to compare before and afterwards. And what we did in the study is it was a 13-minute protocol that was done. The paperwork again was just a huge amount of paperwork. It took about an hour for each patient that we worked on to go through the protocol. And so we would get their baseline of their range of motion right beforehand and then right afterwards. And this is a key thing for you to do in your office too, because sometimes some doctors say, well, I don't know how to prove what the laser has done to my patients when they can't feel it. Use these objective outcomes just like we did to prove to the FDA that the laser is effective. So we would do the range of motion for the arms, also for the neck. We do the 13-minute protocol, which is like 6 minutes to each side and 1 minute to the top of the head. And then immediately afterwards, we remeasured the range of motion and also what their pain level was. And that's where we saw this average increase in range of motion of 30%, which is incredible. And when you look at the studies that were done previously for the Accelerate versus the LED device, LED only gave like I think was it a 2% or an 8% improvement in range of motion. So laser knocked it out of the park on here, especially with the GVL. And the reduction in pain was quite significant. And then the patients had to do follow-up questionnaires at 24 hours after the procedure and 48. And what was really cool, you saw the patient continued to get better as 1 day and 2 days went on, which is different than when you're doing, say, with the LED devices. It's very different. As a matter of fact, the results that I was getting with some of the patients in the study actually concerned me. Because I thought they were almost too good to be believed by the FDA. And, I've been using these lasers for 19 years, had great results, but the GVL took it to even another level. As one example, I had one of the patients in the trial, he had played college football, Division I back in the 1980s. And since then, he had been limited to his range of motion about 110 degrees and chronic pain every day of 6 to 7 out of 10. In that one session, he went from here to about 170 degrees. It was an amazing change that he had. And his pain dropped significantly down to a real mild level. And it stayed there. And I had another patient in the trials who was a college softball player, and then not softball, volleyball player, and now a coach. And she had chronic 6-year shoulder pain that, again, we improved her range of motion and got rid of it in the one session, which blew me away. And so I actually contacted Travis, who was running the research at the 3 different clinics that we did. And I said, hey, Travis, I'm a little worried, man. These results seem too good. I don't think the FDA is going to believe this. And he told me, no, don't worry about it. Dr. Silverman and Dr. Comey are getting the same kind of results. So it was mind-blowing to see these changes so quick with the GVL.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we have doctors on the webinar that are brand new. And then we have doctors, obviously, that have been buying our lasers for 28 years. And I know many of them have added the GVL. So as we're going through this roundtable discussion, I really want to encourage the doctors to ask questions. So are you okay, Dr. Garrett, if I just kind of jump to this slide
Go
here?
right ahead.
I think this is a great slide that just kind of shows the 3 different handheld lasers that we make. And I know you have an Accelerate. I know you have an EVRL. And so just to, make it easier for doctors, when you added the GVL, because I hear doctors, they're stacking it. The doctors, ask me questions, if they stack it, should they, stack them and get all colors into a particular area of the body, or should they put one on the nerve root, so do you want to maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think in stacking it, just getting it on the body, and especially if we look at the research that the Russians do, the Russians were really big on using laser over large blood vessels to get it to the whole body. So it's a concept that I've been doing for a long time. And I didn't realize that the Russians had been doing this since the 60s and 70s. And in my group, I'll share a paper all about that. So Dr. Garrett's laser therapy, treatment, and marketing secrets. And so I really like to hit over the carotid arteries a lot, because then you're going to get all 3 of the unique applications of these different visible colors absorbed into the carotid artery. And where does the blood system go from there? Where does the circulatory system go? It goes everywhere. So I really am a big proponent. That's my method that I use a lot, is over the blood vessels. And we look at an easy way to understand the difference, because sometimes doctors will say, well, what's the difference between a violet, a green, and a red, or an infrared? Is let's just take a patient and let's stick a patient under an ultraviolet tanning bed, and then let's put them in an infrared heat lamp bed. You're going to get totally different results out of that. The patient who's in the UV bed, because of the energy, the photon energy that's so high in there, you're going to stimulate melanin production for a suntan. You're also going to stimulate the production of vitamin D. That's good. How deep does the vitamin D go? It goes all the way to the bones. And it also is going to be picked up by the circulatory system and go everywhere to enhance the immune function and to dampen inflammation. On the contrast, if you do the infrared bed, you're going to get a nice heating kind of feeling, and it's going to penetrate with some warmth into the muscles, but you're not going to create these photochemical types of changes like vitamin D, melanin production, et cetera. So that's an important concept to understand, that when we move into the violet, there's some unique applications that if you look at the research, again, that really started with the Russians in the 60s and 70s, coming up through the recent stuff that Erconi has done, we get things like the antimicrobial effects, because the macrophages really get impacted by the violet wavelength. So when you utilize that wavelength, you're going to provide a lot of support to the immune system. But what I really love about that one is, with that high photonic energy, the highest energy per photon of any of the lasers that are out there, that's really good for breaking down scar tissue. It's great for breaking down scar tissue. It also provides support to the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, in the past, we used to think it was the sympathetic with violet, but we found out we were wrong. We did research studies like Dr. Machado with doing the quantitative EEGs on the brain and on the vagus nerve. The violet's actually going to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. We slide over into the green, and some of the unique things you get with that is the best for stimulating collagen and elastin production. So you're going to see a big change in patients' skin. You're also going to be able to repair some wounds very nicely with that. Research shows that is the best for stimulating stem cell production. There's also other research suggesting it's the best for bone repair and also for nerve regeneration on there. There's not as much research on the green, but it's really, really exciting when you combine the green and the violet. That is the highest combined photonic energy laser in the world, basically. So every single photon that's coming out of there has more energy than any other laser. And you can't make up for the energy per photon by putting more wattage behind it. That just does not change the inherent value within the wavelength of light. When you get into the red, that's where you get the DNA replication, you get some cell proliferation, and you get the sympathetic nervous system support. So when you combine all three of them, you get the benefits of all three of the wavelengths. But the real critical difference here is, do you have that slide on the electron transport chain?
Yep. Let me just, this one?
So this is really huge, and this is one of the big things to talk about, is that think about your patients and think about what medications you're on, because we go back and we look at this and say, oh my God, I can't believe I'm talking about the electron transport chain. I kind of didn't pay attention back in chiropractic school when this came up, because most of us were like that. But this is very important to understand what's going on in the mitochondria to produce ATP. A lot of the focus in marketing for years with lasers is the impact at complex 4, at cytochrome C oxidase, to help support that complex 4 in the making of ATP. What wasn't talked about was complexes 1, 2, and 3. And it's important for you to see there on complexes 1 and 2 on the left, you see it's got violet coming down to it, because those are wavelength specific reactions. The NADH and the NAD and the FADH to FAD, those reactions only occur at specific wavelengths, just like you need the wavelength of ultraviolet light to trigger the right reaction to make melanin or to make vitamin D. You need the specific wavelength of violet to help release that electron, to cause the electron transport to occur. It won't occur with green, it won't occur with red, it will not occur with infrared either. It is wavelength specific. So the violet can support any dysfunction that's at complex 1 and 2. You look at complex 3 now, and at complex 3, it's wavelength specific. It reacts to green wavelength of lasers. And then complex 4 is red wavelengths of lasers. So if you have a dysfunction, it's what's called that there are rate limiting steps. So if there's something wrong at complex 1 or 2 or 3, it'll affect all the complexes downstream. So complex 1 impacts 2, 3, and 4. Complex 2 impacts 3 and 4. Complex 3 impacts complex 4. Now, the question is why do we care about that? Well, when we look at what medications your patients are taking, they can cause disruptions at complexes 1, 2, 3, or 4. And they're really common ones. The first one is NSAIDs. How many chiropractic patients who are coming in for pain are already on NSAIDs or on aspirin or Tylenol or ibuprofen? Any of those meds will cause a disruption in the electron transport chain. How many are on statins or diabetes medications? How about antidepressants? How about cholesterol medications, blood pressure medications? All of those meds, even antibiotics, will trigger disruptions in the electron transport chain. Now, when you have that disruption, then the mitochondria actually gets dysfunctional, and dysfunctional mitochondria lives longer than healthy mitochondria. And so over time, you can get to where more of your mitochondria is unhealthy versus healthy. And it becomes a chronic problem for patients to have adequate energy. We see these mitochondrial dysfunctions in autoimmune patients. And autoimmunity has exploded in the last few years. So if you're using just the Accelerate, you're only going to impact complex 4. If you're using the EVRL, you can impact complex 1, 2, and 4. But if you use a combination of all three wavelengths, you can impact that electron transport chain to make the whole thing flow smoothly. And now you have this global impact that's huge on patients' bodies. And that's what we've noticed since we've added in the third wavelength. I now add it in on every single patient. So many times I'll stick the FX and I'll have it going around the head, around the trunk and the abdomen. And then I put the GVL in a stand, or I know if you have the new FX, it'll slide right in there on the top. Like, which doctor was it who showed that? Do you remember, Penny? That how the GVL will fit right in the top?
Oh, I don't remember who it was, but yeah, sorry. I know Dr. Ryan Manning, when we were at Parker, he was stacking them like that too.
Yeah, and it's really cool that way you've got all three of them together. You just made your own FX 520 basically, and
Yeah.
you stack that together. So, and you'll see just amazing results. Patients notice the difference as well too.
That's a good point, and I wanted to let the doctors know because I know there's doctors that have the FX 635 and the FX 405. So the
Yeah.
beauty of adding the GVL is that number one, you have something that is more mobile. So like you said, you stack that with your current FXs and you're able to affect all those different complexes. And now you have a laser that you can have the mobility of it to be able to, use it away from the office, take it on vacation, go treat athletes away from the office. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that's great information. Now, I have a question because a lot of doctors, that are new, they're looking at getting the GVL. And
Mhm.
so, a lot of them are looking at the GVL and then saying, well, I need an Accelerate too. So, they're coupling that. But when they look at, the prices of that, and of course, Zirconia would give you a discount for multiple lasers, it would just
Yeah.
make more sense to get the base station, right?
It would. And if I were to get a base station, let's just give the best recommendation of what to do, because remember, these are going to pay for themselves. Just like I mentioned, right now, my biggest problem is I need to get more lasers because I have a waiting list for my rental program and I don't advertise. It's just patients asking to rent them. And like I said, I had one patient who rented it for 3 months, who rented an EVRL. I find that most of the patients want to rent the EVRL. And so if I were to do a base station now, I would get a GVL and then 2 EVRLs is the way I would do it. And then you can actually rent out the EVRLs. And we have all the kind of paperwork you would need to get that up and running in your office, what you have them sign, what the agreement is. And I charge $250 a week for the rentals. Some places that are more affluent, they can get away with charging more, but I'm in a lower economic area outside of just east of Los Angeles. Like I said, I have a waiting list for that. And that would be the way that I would do it, is I would get 1 GVL and 2 EVRLs.
Okay, that's great. Do you want me to show the comparative study? Because I think that's a great one to show
Yeah,
all of our.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, so this will show you doctors the comparison. So when you're thinking about getting it, and what I really love about this too is this helps you to set up a niche, basically, of you being the unique doctor compared to everybody else. Because when I started 19 years ago, laser was extremely rare. People thought I was nuts anyway, just for having lasers. I know you ran into that when you were selling them back then, right? That people were like, laser, what the heck is this? And I titled the name of my office in 2004 Laser Chiropractic, and people really thought I was crazy because you didn't hear about it much. Now, as you see online, there's a lot more talk about red light therapy and infrared therapy and LEDs and all this stuff, but nobody's doing green and violet. Zirconia is really the only one that's doing it. And this is, again, how you can set yourself apart, that no patient can go and buy anything that can compare even close to this online. So when we look at the red only, the Accelerate, when we did chronic neck and shoulder pain, that's in that column there on the left. Red and violet is in the middle, and green and violet. I wish this one had the LED. We also have one. Go into my group, Dr. Gare's Laser Therapy Treatment Marketing Secrets, and I have the slide as a cover photo showing what the LED does. That it just, anybody who tries to tell you that an LED is just as good at a fraction of the cost doesn't pay attention to research, because it's just, when you go head to head, it's not even close. So we look at the average duration there. Everybody was over 5 years. Green and violet, we had the longest average duration of pain. And that next thing is how many subjects admit the criteria for the study. But the big thing here is, what was the percentage in range in pain right after the treatment? And so pain was close to each other. The red was 48% drop in pain immediately after the treatment. Red and violet was 45. Green and violet, we had a 52% drop in pain. So we had the biggest drop in pain immediately after the treatment with the green and violet. What I'm most excited about is the functional improvement. This is where the green and violet really kicked butt. Red, you had a 43% improvement in pain the 48 hours post-intervention. The red and violet was 50%, a little bit better than the Accelerate. But look at the green and violet, 48 hours. And this is with the patient self-reporting, 65% improvement. So we're really seeing that long-term improvement. And look at the overall range of motion. If you've got an Accelerate, you can expect about a 14% improvement in range of motion in the single session. The EVRL was double that at 29, and the GVL was even better at 32%. So again, this is showing you why, if you want the biggest bang for your buck to impress your patients, because that's where you're going to generate the referrals, the GVL really even blows our own other lasers out of the water. It just takes it to another level because of that high photonic energy.
Yeah, this is a great slide. And I always tell doctors that the GVL is not going to replace any of our other lasers. It just
Mm-mm.
basically, when you look at that electron transport chain and the complexes, it just enhance what you currently are using. Let's say there's a new doctor getting started and,
Yeah.
looking at this data. I mean, obviously they're going to look at, well, shoot, I should probably get the GVL. If budget
Mm-hmm.
didn't permit, for them to get started, as opposed to an Accelerate, which is roughly about $10,000, what would you let those doctors know about, well, maybe I can get started with a red. I always tell them we've been making that red laser for 28 years.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere. Maybe start with that one with the intent as you grow to the base station that get
Yeah.
something so you can market
Right.
yourself. So you can, I mean, we don't want to
Right.
ever really take away what the red does. Do you have anything to
No.
say about that?
Yeah, and I would say, because that's how I started. I started my
Yeah.
practice with the red, with the PL5 way back in the day, and it was a great laser for building the practice. And I think here's the big thing too: is when doctors say, oh, "I don't think I can afford it." 2004, when I went up to Murphy's seminar, I was broke because Governor Schwarzenegger had signed that legislation that basically carved us out of the workers' comp system. And that was my bread and butter. I was a qualified medical evaluator. And I went from doing really well, like, $200 to $300 a patient visit, um, to overnight nothing, because the whole system was in chaos. So I had to reinvent myself very, very quickly. And when I went up to San Francisco to see him speak, I'd actually made a promise to my wife that, I wouldn't buy anything. I wouldn't be like Jack and the Beanstalk and buy a bunch of bright and shiny objects. And then when I saw the bright and shiny objects and what they did with changing the range of motion so fast, I'm like, okay, I've got to get this, but let me see if it works. And here's the thing that you have to do is you got to chunk it down. Don't just look at the price. Oh my God, it's $20,000.
Mhm.
How do you pay for your car? $20,000 car. What's your monthly payment on that? You're looking, let's say it's maybe $500 a month if let's say if you did even a base station or something, but let's chunk it down. An Accelerate is going to be a penny. What's the payment? Like $160 a month, something like that, 165,
Yeah,
which is like,
just a little bit more than that. But yeah, you're right on.
which, let's break that down. That's $40 a week,
Yeah.
which if you're open 4 days a week, that's $10 a day. And most people go and they go get a Starbucks coffee, or they get a tea, or they get something that they blow $10 on. $10 here, you can now bring yourself in extra income. And let's even say a GVL, which a GVL, let's say, is maybe $20 a day in your practice. I mean, it's not that you can't afford it. You can't afford not to do this, because you're missing out on an opportunity of being the first one to have this type of a laser in your office, that way before anybody else. And when you're the first person in your area to have something like this, you become the guy or the lady who's like the seen as a trendsetter of getting the newest and the most well-researched device that's out there. But so definitely there's no excuse to at least not get the Accelerate. It's a great laser to build your practice. But even if you look at that, chunk it down to what your daily cost would be of using it in the office. And you'll see that even a GVL is within the reach of anybody on this
Yeah.
webinar.
I know it's all about building value. Both of us have been in the marketing industry. I've been in it 30 years, so have you. What I love about you, Dr. Gare, is that I know you used to be a teacher, a high school
Yeah.
teacher before you were a chiropractor.
And junior high.
And
Junior
okay.
high in a rough area, rough gang infested area. Yeah. So.
But what I love about you, and I know you do no external marketing, is that you're good about building value. If the value is there, then the patients will pay for the care. And I tell doctors too, maybe give your patient a free laser treatment, because 90% of the time you can make a change, just like the study, in one treatment. Multiple laser treatments are beneficial for the healing process of tissues. So then you can guide then you can guide the patient into maybe a program of 6 or 10 laser treatments over a period of 2 to 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that, with adding these lasers, I don't think you do any external marketing, do you?
No, none.
Everything is internal.
I'm too busy.
Yeah.
I'm literally yesterday, on my wait list, I had 10 patients on the wait list that I just couldn't get to. And I think 2 or 3 of them were new. We have people who will book out, I'm not exaggerating, for the rest of the year to lock in a spot, because we're just that busy. I don't do any marketing. Literally, my biggest stress is, how soon can I get this person in? I actually I started my practice yesterday an hour and a half early and finished 45 minutes later, just to try to accommodate more people. That's my biggest problem, because nobody does what I do in the area. It's literally, when I take off and I travel, like I was in the UK last week teaching laser over there, I don't worry about losing patients, because where are they going to go? they can't get what I do. So it's just they're stuck with me basically.
Yeah.
And you know, so here's the EVRL, and when I show the patients this, they're blown away because it's just, first of all, it's a beautiful laser. The green and the violet there, they're really impressed when they see it. And I use that as a sales point too. As I said, listen, this is the first and only in the world that is an FDA cleared laser. So what you're getting here is technology you can't get anywhere else. Patients love that. They love to brag about you and say, oh, my doctor has the only one. You can't do it anywhere else. And you have to think in terms of that to make, how do you make your patient excited about it? And telling them, oh, this is this bright and shiny object that you can't get this anywhere else. And this is a unique time to be able to say that and create that niche for yourself.
And you pretty much use the GVL exactly how you've used your Accelerate and your EVRL,
yeah.
right?
Yes. Yeah. Doctors are always asking, what's the pro? What do I do for the GVL versus this? Like, it's the same thing. There's no learning curve to it. You just get, and let's say if you're brand new to lasers, it's simple as, my patient has shoulder pain, stick it on there, get them to do some movement. That's about all you have to do if you're getting started. Get them to do some movement. That's what we did in the FDA study. Put the laser on the arm and had them do some ranges of motion. 1 minute of adduction, 1 minute of abduction, 1 minute of flexion. You know, that's what we did in the studies to get that kind of a difference. The key thing is they'll make sure that you're doing a pre and a post measurement so the patient can see the change too. And that's how you generate those referrals, is how you process your patient, is have them do the movement that causes them pain, get them to rate it, do the laser and nothing else, and then get them to redo it, and they'll see it drop. And that's when their eyes pop out of their heads and they get excited, and all their family members want to come in too.
That's a really good point, because some of my doctors, especially doctors that come over from the class 4 laser world, where the patients feel the heat, they're like, well, how can I show them changes? And exactly what you just showed is showing the showmanship. So again, I think that is such a good point. So I know, so when it comes to charging, I know every doctor kind of charges differently. And so whether it is individual prices for lasers, or if it's, you know, it's built into what you're already, like your office visit, do you charge separately?
I bundle it in the first visit to where they don't have a choice. They're getting laser no matter what, because then that takes any of the discussion out of it. I didn't do that when I first started. When I first started, what I would do is I charged separate for it, and I would ask the patient, okay, you've got blah, blah, blah condition. My question for you, I would ask them is, do you want to get better faster, or do you want to take longer? And, you know, most of the patients are going to say, well, I want to get better faster. And then I would say, okay, to get better faster, then you're going to need to do a protocol that includes laser, because the research shows laser will get you better about 25 to 35% faster. That's the way I started initially. And then I would charge extra. And at first I was undercharging. I would charge like $25 is what I did. Or I actually, to build the word of it, is I took my 10 best patients, you know, the ones with the biggest mouths that are the biggest referrers. And I told them this, and it's key the way that you say it. Don't just give it to them for free. You want to create some sizzle to it to get them excited about what they're getting. And I'd pull them aside and say, listen, I have this new technology here that I'm testing out. I respect your opinion. I'd like you to be one of my patients in my pilot study on this. And I'm going to give you this treatment for free. Normally it's going to be X amount of dollars. You know, normally it's going to be 40 or 50 or 60 or whatever. Normally it's going to be this. I want to give it for free, and I want to get your feedback on it. And so I did that, and then they were blown away. They felt valued that I valued their opinion. They felt they got something of value for free, and I knew it wasn't going to be free in the future. So it's a key thing you want to do, because I find that most doctors don't charge at all for it, and they give it for free, and they don't even tell the patient they give it to them for free. So if you're going to do something like that, you want to make sure you let them know what you're doing. But what I do is, with my new patients, it's bundled together. That's what they're getting, is they're getting laser and the adjustment together, and they don't have a choice on that. I do give them a choice later where some patients can do adjustment only, but that's maybe 1% of my patients will do that. Almost all of them want the laser and the adjustment together, because they feel the difference and feel that they adjust easier and they hold their adjustment longer. I do charge, depending on how many areas we're doing. My minimum charge for laser is $45. Even if I do just a quick reset that's just a couple of minutes, that's minimum of $45. If we do multiple areas, or if we're doing, say, the 20-minute session for chronic low back pain with the FX, we charge $100 for that. If it's a 10-minute session for chronic heel pain and plantar fasciitis, that's $70 just for that. So that's the way that I do it. And I'm in an area that's with a lot of immigrant undocumented workers that are cash paying patients. they see the value and they pay for it on there. So that's the way I do it at my office.
Yeah, that's perfect. I have a lot of doctors that are always trying to get that Reader's Digest version of what's the best way to explain to patients what these lasers are doing. And then with your
Yes.
existing patients, so I'll let you answer that. And then a
Sure.
follow-up question would be, bringing in this new GVL, how do you differentiate the GVL to your other lasers that you've been using and really building
Sure.
value with that without taking away what the other lasers do?
Sure. So I'll give you an example of my script. And again, if anybody wants my my notes that includes this, they can just either contact Penny or contact me, Dr. Garrett Gmail, and ask for my notes. So this is my script. When the patient comes in, I'll show them, okay, here's my laser, and I'll ask them if they heard anything about lasers. Now people have heard a little more. So either through social media or through friends, especially since I get a lot of referrals, they've already been referred in. But this is my basic spiel: is I'll tell them, okay, here's my laser. You're going to see it looks unimpressive. It looks like a barcode scanner or like a laser leveler. Now, why do I say that? I want to bring up their objections before they say it, because some people are going to try to, they just always want to push your buttons and try to be the naysayer. If I bring this stuff up, they don't have anything that they can, kind of be a smart ass about and pull it up. So I said, it looks like a barcode scanner or a laser leveler, but let me show you how this actually works. Let's pretend that my hand is a plant's leaf. And in the plant's leaf, there are light receptors called photoreceptors. If this is sunlight, when sunlight hits the plant's leaf, these photoreceptors will absorb the photons of energy from sunlight. Sounds like Star Trek. And they're going to absorb that energy and turn it into food through photosynthesis. Now, once the plant makes food here in the leaf, it doesn't just stay in the leaf. It goes throughout the whole body. I want to get them already programmed to understand that the laser therapy is going to affect their whole body, not just where it's applied. So then I go to the next step and I say, now, if you go out in the sun, sunlight hits you, your photoreceptors that you have in your skin and your eyes and throughout your body will absorb the energy and then cause you to make melanin for a suntan. But you're also going to make vitamin D that's going to affect your bones that are way, way deep beneath the skin. And it's going to affect your immune system to support the immune system and decrease inflammation. Now, with the laser, we're going to get some different things. I get the laser on you. One of the things we're going to do is we're going to make stem cells. And stem cells are a big word, big buzzword online. A lot of people are looking into this stuff. So that's why I bring this up. The laser will help you make stem cells so you can actually repair at least 25 to 35% faster. We're going to increase your energy production by supporting something called the mitochondria, which those are just like the powerhouses in your cells. We're going to improve blood flow and we're going to decrease inflammation. And the cool thing that you'll know how this works, because you're not going to feel it because it's not a thermal laser, is we should see some improvement in your range of motion. What I'm shooting for on the first session is a 10, 20, or 30% improvement in your pain or your range of motion. Boom, that's it. That's all I say on that. That way, what I've done is they have a really basic, I thought about how could I explain this to my crazy junior high school patients who used to try to set the room on fire when my back was turned, is how could I explain it to those kids and have them figure it out? And that's the example of how they could totally understand it. I brought up their objections before they had any objections of their own. Told them they're not going to feel anything, and I managed their expectations for them to get a 10, 20, or 30% improvement. Because if I don't set that tone, what do they expect? They expect 100%, and they'll even show you, well, if I go like in this extreme position, I still feel it a little bit. And I don't want them to be thinking about that. I want them at the start that I'm controlling their expectation, that if I get that 10 to 30% improvement, hey, we're right on track. That's what I was shooting for. That's my basic, canned, as you said, Reader's Digest version of what's the wrap that I do. And when they ask me, well, how many treatments am I going to need? I actually tell them this: I don't know. And any doctor who tells you they know for sure isn't telling you the truth. I have an idea of where it's going to be. It could be somewhere between, let's say, for a back strain, 4 to 6 weeks. I know we can get this faster with a laser, but there's also factors that you're going to do that impact this. Are you going to follow a diet? We're going to give you a handout on diet for injury, so make sure you don't eat inflammatory foods, because that can make this take longer. And I said, we're going to get a better idea of how long this is going to take when you come back in after your first session. We see how much you improved. We see how you did while you're out there at work or doing your sports or whatever. And my goal is to get you better as quickly and safely as possible. And so we're going to work on this week by week to see that we're making progress and to try to get you back out there as quickly as possible. That's my basic wrap.
That's awesome. And then when you're introducing the GVL, not taking away anything from the other lasers, do you explain to them the difference, or does it even matter?
I do. I know. I explain to them the difference, and I tell them, look, this is, I tell them this is the only FDA cleared green and violet laser in the world. And I tell them, since I was involved in the study, I said I was the first person to ever have one of these. Me and Dr. Silverman were the first person. So doctors on this webinar, you can say, you know, I'm the first one in this area to have this laser, this unique laser that's been shown to be the most effective for chronic neck and shoulder pain. So we can get you better faster with this one because it has the highest energy per photon of any laser that's out there. And patients really are excited with things like that to know that they're getting the only thing that's out there. So when you have the GVL, that's a great marketing tool. And this differentiates you from all the other red light therapy devices that are being peddled to them online, coming out of China.
Yeah, that's a good point. I just wanted to encourage the doctors to use the Q&A box to ask questions. We're here for you. Dr. Gare's here for you. And while you're thinking about maybe some of your questions, I wanted to just go, as we're unveiling these different conditions, this is the role of mitochondria and osteoarthritis. And do you want to mention how they can use this to really understand what the GVL can do for them?
Yeah, and this again shows you is that you have the different complexes in the electron transport chain. They're not only just for energy production, but like here with osteoarthritis, they're showing that in patients who have osteoarthritis, that mitochondrial dysfunction is part of the problem. And in people with osteoarthritis, which how many of your patients have this, they have dysfunctions in complexes 1, 2, and 3. So if you really want to completely treat them and get the best results, and I'm always big on how do I get the best results that no other doctor around me can get, using the GVL is going to do that. And we look at this, a key thing, if you just go in there onto PubMed, start typing in the role of mitochondria in diseases, you're going to see that it's everything from even autoimmunity to aging, to dementia, neurodegeneration, and even like the brain fog that people are getting from, like say, long COVID on there as well too. So you're going to see all these different things that mitochondria involved in all these things in diabetes, in heart disease, and pretty much everything. Now, the key thing is I'm not saying that you treat these things with your laser and never ever market on any of those things. You're not FDA cleared to treat for marketing, but understand that when you get this on your patient, it's going to have this global impact on them, that whatever dysfunction they've got going on, they may see these things improve, and you're affecting this patient's overall health and function because of that.
Yeah, I think it's great. When I see something like this, I'm all like you, and I think that's why I love working with you, is that you're just really great at building value. So when I see something like this and that patient walks in and they've got osteoarthritis, doctors can use this as a tool to maybe just show the patients and say, this is the reason I want to use the GVL on you. So do you think that would be good for them to use something like this as a resource? Because we can send you the studies.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. And you have this, and you can have these in I would put together a little 3-ring binder and have this in your office, or just have some printouts that you can give to patients to see, like let's say based on what their condition is. That way they understand that they can't go to any other doctor's office and get the same thing. And this is not to knock like a high-powered class 4 device, but it's just like they can't go to the class 4 doctor and get the same kind of thing because the energy per photon is so low. It falls below that 1.7 electron volt threshold that occurs at 730 nanometers, which is where you shift into infrared. That energy per photon is so low, you can't trigger these electron reactions that you can with the visible wavelengths. That's why they ramp up the power on there to try to hit a higher dosage, but it still doesn't have the energy to affect complex 1, 2, and 3, like to actually stimulate collagen to repair some of these tissues that you have here.
Yeah, that's great. And if the doctors would like to receive this study, I believe we have it available. So I'm going to show you your representative. Is it? Okay.
It's in my notes. So I can send my notes to Erchonia, and then doctors who want it can just either contact Erchonia, or you can email me at drgair@gmail. This is DRGAIR @gmail, and I can send you the notes that way.
Yeah, and I want to reference too that recently, I think you did an interview with Chiropractic Economics.
Right.
That was right before we did the reveal of the GVL in February. Right. And can you tell, because we can send you that recording. A lot of times doctors want to know, the breakdown of those complexes. So you touched on things in that we're probably not going to get to today. So can you share that, and we can make sure that you get the recording?
Yeah, definitely. We can send you the link to be able to see the replay on chiroecho.com. And in there, I really talked about benefits of using all three wavelengths. And it's a webinar I'm really proud of. You know, I first started doing webinars for Erchonia 6 years ago, and it takes a lot of time to put these things together. And that was the one that when I was done, I felt like it was my masterpiece. Kind of like I felt like that was the one that really hit all the points to where if you really want to know what does the red wavelength, what does the green, what does the violet do, what do we do in the studies, how does it compare to high power and to infrared? I go over all that stuff. How does it compare to LED? So if you want, it's an hour long, but if you really want to see all the stuff that I've been learning over the last 20 years of using lasers condensed into an hour, it's a great webinar. When you get done with this one, your knowledge of what lasers do will be on a whole other level, and it will help you to unlock just how you can utilize these things for so many different conditions. And you can definitely get the link from Penny from Erchonia. It's a
I
great
will
webinar.
I will tell you, I've had so many doctors that have watched your webinar, and we've done a handful of different webinars with lots of our top doctors like Dr. Barry and Dr. Silverman, and they're all
Yeah.
so different but very relevant with the information, and you can ask your representative for any of those. But I've had so many doctors that have called me after watching yours and said, oh my gosh, he explained it in terms that I understood. I want to buy that. And it's basically where you really understand the value of what you can use this GVL, this brand new GVL for. It makes perfect sense. So if you want that, I'm going to show you a slide at the end here with all of your representatives and just ask them for the Chiro Economics Dr. Kurt Gare replay, and we'll send it to you. Another thing I wanted to mention, because when I'm bringing doctors into the Erchonia family and they're getting started with their lasers, they're so hungry for technique. They want to see technique. And this, I know this is not a technique webinar, but you have modules that you put together, which you show working on patients, and you explain how you treat athletes for sports recovery, how performance enhancement you use lasers. So, so do you want to maybe touch on that? And I can make sure that, you know, I know that those are masterpieces as well. And I always want to let these doctors know that we have these resources that you have videotaped.
Yeah, and I think my most recent, before this one, my webinar I did a few weeks ago, that was on how to implement even the percussor and adjuster. That one I did an hour, and that's a great one for docs to have sent out, because in there, I've got just video after video of showing you basic point and shoot techniques of how do you do a shoulder, how do you do a neck, how do you do the TMJ, how do you do the knee. It's actually really simple. But again, the big thing you want to do is, let's say if it's a low back or a knee or something, is you want to do that pre-assessment, have them do a squat, have them do a lunge, whatever it is that bothers them. If it's walking, if it's, you know, whatever kind of movement, have them do that. Then do the laser that I show you in these videos, which is literally sticking the laser on there and either having them move the area or you using the percussor on that area, and then have them do the squat or the lunge. And you can see the change very quickly. If they're a new patient, I wouldn't use a percussor at the same time, because then they're going to think the percussor is what did it, and they're going to go buy a Theragun thinking that can do the same thing.
Yeah.
I like to do the laser and nothing else, and that's a key thing on new patients. So you can show them they got that 10, 20, 30% or more with just the laser. You want to control their thinking. Same thing if it's a shoulder, and you'll see it in the videos in that most recent webinar. So if it's a shoulder and they're an athlete, have them go through a throwing motion, a batting motion. If they're a worker and they're doing like you know, network installation or wiring or electrical work, and have them do their motion overhead, like, oh yeah, God, that really hurts right there when I do that. Then do the laser, have them just move it while you've got the laser on there and nothing else, and reassess them. It's that simple to do that. I do have my other more advanced technique called my neuro recalibration technique. Some other doctors call it upregulation. I don't like that word, even though that's the technical correct word for it, but patients have no idea what upregulation is. And you always have to think of being the showman or the person to kind of put it in terms they understand. I call it neuro recalibration because everybody has a smartphone, and they know that when their GPS is off, it'll ask you to recalibrate your phone. You got to do that little thing like this, little motion there. As I tell them, I'm recalibrating your nervous system. We're resetting the software here. Kind of like when your phone is not working right, or your tablet or laptop, and you got to reboot it. We're going to reboot the nervous system. And that's where we go through. And it's as simple as this. You go to a myotome, you test it. If it's weak, you laser the muscle or you laser the nerve root, 5 or 10 seconds, and you can reset it in the majority of the cases. And you just go through the myotomes and you test it, and whatever's weak, you reset it. It's as simple as that for a lot of these conditions to make some huge improvements. That again is where their eyes pop out of their head. The best way to experience this though is to come to one of my live seminars to where we actually get into groups and workshop this, so you can actually do it on other doctors, have it done on yourself, and feel the difference, because that's where you can get your skills up the best for that one.
That's great, because when I do my trainings with the doctors, I always tell them there's two ways to use zirconia lasers. Dosing,
Mm-hmm.
which you're going to dose, when you look at laser research, about 5 to 10 minutes, you're dosing tissues. But then I always talk about your techniques and recalibration and how you use it and how you can make that change within 5 seconds, just like you mentioned.
Yeah. And if it's the brain, I'll give you this is my easy peasy brain protocol, is whatever they're bad at, you stick the laser on their head. I especially like to hit over the carotids, and you have them do that thing they're bad at while you laser them. So they're bad at speech, stick it on their head, have them do tongue twisters while you're lasering the head. If they're bad at reading or different eye movements, or if they're a batter who's off, you stick it on their head and you do eye exercises. They're bad at balance, you stick it on their head and you have them on a vibration plate. Or if you don't have a vibe plate, then have them do Rombergs, eyes together, feet together, eyes open, and then eyes closed while they're lasering. It's really, you let the laser do the work, and you look like a genius, and it's really very quite simple to do.
Yeah, that's great. Great information. So again, if you want the modules with Dr. Gaer, just ask your representative. I'll make sure that you get their information so that you can contact them. Let me just kind of go to some of the questions. Is there anything else that you want to touch on, Dr. Gaer, before I kind of hit these questions?
No, I think you can hit the questions. I think we've kind of gone through some good stuff.
You might have already answered this, and this is just going back to, are the protocols the same as the Accelerate, or are the frequencies different?
It's the same. Protocols are the same. Just the difference is you're going to get a bigger result. That's plain and simple. But time's going to be the same. Same settings are going to be the same. It's just expect a greater result, especially if you combine the red, green, and the violet. You're going to get the best result with all three of those together.
Yeah, that's why I want to pop up that comparative study again, just kind of showing you the changes there. Dr. Tim Jennings. Hey, Dr. Jennings. Thank you for saying the explanation of the lasers. Is there a way that we can get more about the marketing? Absolutely. Yes, I know that you have several zirconia lasers. I can follow up with you with Dr. Jennings, no problem. So we can make sure that you have all of that. Let me just kind of, there might be another.
Asked about the seminars too. Yeah, I just kind of typed the answer. But yeah, if you want to see where the events are, you go to zirconia.com and go onto the events page. And that's where you can see all the different seminars coming up. Also, if you join my group, Dr. Gaer's Laser Therapy and Marketing, Treatment and Marketing Secrets on Facebook, if you just type in Dr. Gaer's, GAIR''S, laser, it'll pop up, because I have a really rare Scottish name. So nobody else has stuff like that. And we're over 1,000 members on there now too. And you'll see what events I have upcoming on there as well.
Sorry, I was trying to move my screen here. Sure. I think that's a good point, is your Facebook group. I tell every single one of my doctors, why did you design that group? Because it's, once doctors join, they're like, this is amazing. How come I didn't know about this? So do you want to explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, I did this because I remember what it was like starting off in 2004. I was excited about the laser, and I get it back. And I've got Dr. Raruka's book, and then I was just overwhelmed, and I almost wanted to cry. Like, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do? And then I looked for when's the next seminar, and the next seminar back then, Zirconia would only do a handful of seminars a year, and you'd have to go to like Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, or something like that. Is where it was always somewhere far, and I was really very frustrated with that. And I thought, God, this is it's a lot to try to figure this out. But I'm really stubborn. Like, I just don't give up on stuff, and I just kept working at it, trying to go through different scripts and trying to figure out protocols and try to take, Jerome's book is huge because he's brilliant, but that's really hard to absorb all 100% of that. So I did the Pareto principle. What's the 10% that I can get out of this book that's going to impact 90% of my patients? And so that's what I really did, is I wanted to help the doctors who got these lasers be able to not have to struggle like that, to have a forum to go to where you can ask a question. Hey, what do I do for this? What do I do for that? And to create a community, because I felt like that was missing, was there was no laser community where you can interact in real time. And we have some really great doctors on there who've been using lasers as long as I have. Some have been using them longer even, who they'll answer some great questions. And you get to have a different take of what different people are doing, because there's not just one way to use the lasers. There's all these different things, and you'll have like Dr. Ryan Manning will share his little combination that he does with the ligament and the scar tissue, and you've got Dr. Ken Wolf, who has all of his experience that he's done over the years. Brady Wyrick, who's a neurodiplomate, who he shared a great one on there that he did for vertigo, where he created his own protocol for vertigo. So it's a great way for docs too to, like, you know, when you've done something that's really cool, you want to be able to share it. And sometimes it's like, man, if I talk to my family, they don't really get it, you know, but you share it with the other doctors. You got a platform to share things and get excited that you're helping each other out. So that's why we created it, was to make this community so you can feel connected. And also the other problem I saw is that many times you'll have like a patient who comes in who has a family member across the country, and they'll say, hey, who's a doctor that is over in this city or this state? And if you just go on the Erchonia site, you don't really know if that doctor really knows what they're doing. But in this group, we've made connections with doctors. Hey, well, like someone will post, oh, who's in Atlanta, Georgia? Oh, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. And you know that that doctor has been, you know, really continuing to be involved in the learning process and improving their skills. And that's why I created that group.
That's
and
a
we're
great
up to over
point.
1,000 members now. 1,000
I
members.
know, I
We
saw
had
that.
last month, and we have a lot of activity. So it is the group that has, out of all the laser groups that are out there, there are ones that have more activity. More members. Like there's one that has 6,600 members, but they only get about 20 posts a month. My group, last month we had 180 posts, and that's not me. I'm not like Donald Trump tweeting endlessly on there. These are actually other doctors that are in there asking questions and saying different things and interacting. So ton of interaction. I think today alone we've already had like 8 posts in there.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because I even have a lot of friends that have kind of started to opt out of Facebook because of it's
Mm-hmm.
all marketing. And
Yeah,
so what I love about yours is it's very relevant. And
yeah,
these are doctors, whether, I mean, we've been doing this Zirconia for 28 years. So whether you're a new doctor or you get to interact with doctors like yourself. I mean, how
right.
long have you been using Zirconia lasers? Is it 16,
Yeah,
17 years?
20.
Yeah.
This is my
Is
20th
it?
year. Yeah,
Oh,
it's my 20th year.
goodness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so you get to and don't be afraid to ask questions, and you get to follow all of these pertinent,
yeah.
very important conversations. And so it's very active, it's very relevant. And so your link to join or to find you is Dr. Kurt Gare's Laser and Marketing Secrets. Is that it?
Correct. Yeah, laser therapy treatment and marketing secrets. If you just
Oh,
type
I
in
was close.
Dr. Gare's laser, it'll do it. And I know it's a mouthful on there, but I want people to know what they get. And the thing is, I'm a big nerd. I read studies constantly, so I post studies all the time, at least on a weekly basis. In there, sometimes I really get in a kick where I'll post a bunch of them in there to try to help you, kind of see the current research that's out there and things that are pertinent to what you're using with these lasers. Because the more you understand what's being researched out there and how supportive these wavelengths and these powers are, you understand what your device does, because there's so much misinformation out there. And unfortunately, I hate to say this, but the high-powered companies really misrepresent trying to say that all the research is supporting more power, and those particular wavelengths, and they really try to negate the impact that these visible wavelengths have. And so I love to show you the research of what these ones do that is completely different. So if you have a high-powered device, great, use it how you like it, but these are totally different. They function on a quantum level, on a high photonic energy level, and that's what I really try to make sure you understand in the group, is these studies that are current, that are new, that are pertinent to your lasers and to how you can treat people with them.
Okay, so I'm looking at our time. We'll do a couple more questions and then I'll wrap it up with just a couple comments about getting started. One of the doctors had a question about pregnancy and newborns. I don't know if
Yeah.
that was relative to lasers in general or Erconia lasers, or if it was the GVL.
So let's tackle the pregnancy thing. So if someone's pregnant, obviously you're going to say, don't use it over a pregnant uterus. And so why is that? Well, we're never going to have safety studies to show that it's safe to use on a pregnant female. Theoretically, should it cause any problem? No, it shouldn't. But again, you got to look from a liability standpoint. If you have a patient who comes in and you use the laser over their uterus while they're pregnant, if anything goes wrong, the lawyer is going to blame you. And it doesn't matter whether you actually caused the problem or not. You're a target on there. So my recommendation is to keep yourself safe. Don't do it in your office over the pregnant uterus. Now, you can do it over other areas, like over the legs or on the brain. But I always like to, in cases like that, I try to think worst case scenario, how do I protect myself? Well, let's get their OBGYN to sign off on it. And I let them know, make sure that you let them know that it's a non-thermal laser. It's not going to be used over the uterus. We're going to use it on your head for your brain fog, or on your legs, etc., to decrease inflammation. That's what we'll do. Newborns, no contraindication with a newborn, except for like if they have cancer, or don't use it directly into the eyes for a prolonged period of time.
And then another doctor says, just as an FYI, also using my lasers with proprioception, activity and vibrational platforms, which is great because I know you talked about, you just did a webinar with the percussor and the adjuster. And so I know sometimes getting that mechanical affrontation and then you're lasering at the same time, you're getting like a polytherapy approach. So
exactly.
That's great to bring. And again, for those doctors, if you want to see Dr. Gare's percussor adjuster, and those are two pieces of equipment that Arconia makes, I always find my doctors that have lasers, they'll see a video and they'll always end up buying it because it makes perfect sense in getting that mechanical stimulation into the tissues. So we can send that to you. It's the Dr. Gare percussor adjuster webinar.
And that one has an hour of overall videos too. So it's not just for the percussor, but I'll show you how to stack those with your laser protocols. It's really cool. It's a great quick start video. I recommend everybody should get it and take a look at it, whether you're brand new, or especially if you're brand new, definitely need that. If you've been using it for a while, you might find a few little wrinkles that I've got in there that you haven't done.
Yeah. And then this next doctor says, any experience getting rid of, you can either say tinnitus
or tinnitus.
Tinnitus. I think in England we say tinnitus.
Tinnitus. And that's how Brandon Brock says it too. Tinnitus. And I don't know which one's right. I don't know. I kind of, anyway, so yeah, it can help with that. That can be tricky because first of all, you have to look at, is there an inflammatory component to it, like from the diet? Could there be gluten reactions, casein reactions, corn and soy? Those are potential things that there could be an autoimmune reaction going on with the neural networks. The other thing is you got to look at, is there damage? Like I played lead guitar in a rock band for a long time. So a lot of loud stuff, there's definitely damage going on there to where you can actually have, degeneration of the bones there. So depending on what percentage you can get, like for myself, I was able to reduce it 70% with mine. There's some patients where 100% resolution, there's some where there's no change. It just really depends. So I like to kind of tell the patient, listen, this is a little one of the trickier things. It's not like a shoulder injury where I can say, yeah, I know more what I'm going to do. We're going to range somewhere from, 0 to 100. Maybe if we get 30% improvement or 70%. For me, 70% was life-changing to where I didn't need to sleep with a fan on anymore. I can tune it out. What I do on there is I put it on the brain, and then I like to have them listen with headphones to something like Mozart or Bach or Beethoven, and we have them listen to it and try to pick out all the different instruments, and then keep turning the volume down, turning the volume down to try to reset those particular neural networks on there to kind of make them less sensitive on there. But you got to stack that with an anti-inflammatory diet and using supplements like turmeric and resveratrol and omega-3s, especially the DHA, which is good for the brain, magnesium. Those are some core things you'd want to do with a patient like that.
Okay. I know all of the doctors say, tinnitus is actually a tough one. So I think that was great input. So Dr. Pierce, thanks for joining us. I'm so glad you're here. I know he recently just got his GVL, and this is what he said. He said, just wanted to say bravo, another great seminar. Thank you both for your time. Seeing incredible results during my first month of using the GVL. That's amazing. I know you sent me a video. And then he goes on to say, currently working with a 10-year-old youth gymnast who is rated up to 10 in the state of California. She has been falling off the beam recently to the left, rebalanced using Kirk and Jerome's protocols, problem fixed. She's even doing better in school. Love this stuff. And I know
that's awesome.
That's exactly what you do with your athletes. I mean, you treat a ton of athletes. Yeah. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, you'll see some amazing stuff. And as you mentioned, it just popped in my head yesterday that I have this athlete who's coming in, not for any injury. This kid was coming in to use the GVL because the violet component is FDA cleared for acne. So they were coming in actually for acne. This kid had really bad cystic acne. So what I did is I stacked the FX around his head and the GVL going across the areas of acne. And I just told him, I said, listen, as we're doing this for your acne, you may notice improvements in your sports performance too. And he's mainly a football player, but he also does track. This past week, he competed in a track event, and I think he took first, but he set a personal record for his best time in the 400 meters, and he did it in 4 seconds faster, which if you follow people who sorry, it was the 100 meters. He did it 4 seconds faster, which is an insane. No, it was the 400 meters. Sorry, I was right. It's an insane amount of time. He did the 400 meters and he did it 4 seconds faster. He PR'd beforehand. His fastest time was 59 seconds. Now it was 55 seconds. You don't see a jump like that to where all of his coaches and teammates were like, dude, how did you get that much faster in such a short period of time? And it was literally in the 4 weeks he's been coming in for the laser for the acne. And so, because what did we do? We improved his brain function and improved the whole body function. We see this all the time. I have athletes who are one who was the fastest kid in the US in the 400 meters a few years ago. We did, just like you said, we did the muscle resetting protocols and a brain protocol on him. And that kid went down to the Pan Am Juniors game and set a world record and got a gold medal. And he went from having a season-ending hamstring injury to a gold medal and a world record on there. So we see this all the time. It's really fun stuff.
That's a great point. My daughter is playing collegiate sand volleyball, and she had a concussion about a month ago, and she was really struggling. I was going to have to fly out to be with her. She was having trouble they wouldn't let her go to school. They wouldn't let her compete. We got her an Erchonia laser within 24 hours. And when she was brought onto the team, she was the last one that they brought on. So she was kind of at the low end, and we started lasering her 3 times a day. Where we're hitting the vagus nerve, the brain. And within probably 24 hours, she immediately started to feel the changes. But then she actually started doing better and better and better than the other teammates. And so now she's ranked #1 and she's undefeated.
That's awesome.
So guess what? She doesn't want to give me back the laser.
Of course not. Well, and that goes back to the study in the Journal of Biophotonics that said that athletes who use laser therapy regularly have similar improvements to an athlete who's taking performance enhancing drugs. This is the Journal of Biophotonics in 2016 using low-level lasers. And they even said the differences were so big in muscle strength, muscle mass, recovery, muscle torque, that they said, we're not sure this should be allowed in the Olympics and international competition because it gave these athletes an unfair advantage. But how do you test to know if someone used a laser? You don't. And so there's no way it could ever be illegal. There's no side effects to it. So I tell all of my athletes, hey, do you want an unfair advantage? And who doesn't want an unfair advantage? Everybody wants that.
Right. That's a good point. And then we're just going to kind of finish up our day here. Here's a question from a doctor. Have you had MD-DOs send you patients from your great outcomes?
So yeah, I had one of my patients. He was a medical director at Kaiser over here in Southern California. And he had to send them to me on a down low. He said, hey, listen, just so you know, I'm sending my patients over to you, but I can't officially recommend them to you because he said, if I do, then legally Kaiser has to pay for it. But he said, not even even if they don't have the coverage, but because he's a medical director, if he had sent them, Kaiser would have to pay for it. So he kind of did it on a roundabout way. And he would come in all the time for treatment at my office. And I asked him, I said, listen, you've got this, because they actually have a PPO insurance, the medical directors at Kaiser. They don't have to go through Kaiser, which is interesting. So he would come in all the time to see me for things. I said, I got to ask you a question. You have access to anything you want at Kaiser. Why do you come to me? He's like, we're so far behind what you're doing. He said, we're 20, 30 years behind it. He's like, I'll be honest. He's like, our PT sucks. He said, we delay it hoping that a patient just gets better on their own. That's why I come to you. So yeah, we have him send them to me. I have a lot of dentists who send me their patients for TMJ because, they can come to me, do 6 laser treatments. We can knock out most TMJ cases. Whereas if they go to the orthodontist, they're going to drop $2,000 on a night guard and still have the problem going on.
That's a great point. And when I had my clinic, when I brought the Erchonia lasers in, we really didn't have any money to do external marketing, but I knew from a marketing background that 80% of your marketing should be internal anyway, and only 20% should be external. So I developed this medical doctor referral program where I started asking my patients, who's your medical doctor? And a lot of times they had maybe 3 or 5 medical doctors. And I said, out of those medical doctors, is there anybody that you think thinks outside the box? We're doing a community medical doctor outreach program. And it just allows us to contact your medical doctor and say, hey, we have a mutual patient. They presented with this condition. We're going to do chiropractic care. We're going to do FDA cleared low level laser. Here's some research, and I'll send you an update. And then maybe at midway through their care, we would send an update letter. And then when they were released from care, we'd say, hey, we've released them from care. And they said, you're amazing. You're a podiatrist or a general practitioner or plastic surgeon. And I wanted to come in and pick up some business cards because I'm looking for a podiatrist, general practitioner, any kind of, doctor that I can say, I'm going to send you patients because this patient said you're amazing. And then incorporating that medical doctor referral program after about maybe 6 months of incorporating it, we were getting 10, 20, even 30 referrals per month. I have a local orthopedic group in Mesa that sends all of their business to one of our physical therapy clinics that has maybe 6 or 7 of our handheld lasers, and they get the most referrals from orthopedic surgeons because we have an FDA clearance for post-surgery that we can heal up to 50% faster using one of the handheld lasers. So if you want that information, you want those medical doctor letters to be more marketable, just think, you're working smart, not harder. So let me just take a quick look here. Will there ever be this? All of the doctors are asking me this since releasing the GBL. Will there ever be a unit that is red, violet, and green?
Yeah,
go ahead.
I actually asked Steve Shanks, Erchonia president, main researcher and owner, about that. He said, he said eventually, but he said, look, it took us 4 years to do the GBL, to prove the research on there, to get that cleared. So he said the next hurdle is you got to now do the clinical trials of all 3 wavelengths together. So that's years down the road as well too. So don't worry, it's not like you're going to buy something now that next year something's going to pop out. It's going to be at least another 5 years down the road before something like that comes out because of all the research that has to go into that. So, but that would be cool once it happens. But Erchonia doesn't do anything until it's all cleared and all got the okay on there to make sure that they're protected, you're protected, etc.
Good point. And then I'm just going to finish with the doctor that has one question about the performance enhancement of how you use the lasers. Again, I'm going to refer to, and let me just kind of go to a couple slides here. I'm going to refer to the your modules, because you talk about that in your modules. Let me just kind of, here's another webinar that we hosted with actual Steve Shanks, who's in that pink red shirt. He's the president of Erchonia. We hosted a webinar.
He's a laser genius.
He is.
Genius. Like he blows all of us doctors away. Like every time I talk to him, it's like tapping into the laser source. Like I get something new on there. So, if you guys think we know a good amount, it's a trickle compared to him. He's like the source of the raging Mississippi.
Yeah, and I'm actually working at corporate today. This is why I actually have some pretty banners behind me. I'm usually at my office, which is back in Arizona. And it's fun because Steve, they've been doing this 28 years. And Steve is as passionate today as he was 28 years ago when they started Erchonia. And they have a unique story. It's a family operated business. And it's very rare that we even get Steve on a webinar. But if you really, outside of the webinar that Dr. Gare did, we have one with Dr. Dan Murphy and Steve Shanks, really, again, breaking down these complexes. If you would like that webinar, just request it from your representative. I'm going to show you who your representative is. But when you hear the passion, and he comes running in the office today and he's like, Penny, I've got so much new stuff that's coming out. It's going to be exciting for everybody that has the GBL, as well as the other lasers. But the excitement right now is this brand new GBL. I'm just going to kind of go through to, these are just studies that you can get that just validate those wavelengths. If you want to learn about renting your lasers out, if you're looking at the base station, this is a great webinar that we hosted with Dr. John Harmon, and just like Dr. Gare, who's a master at renting lasers out. Even if you rented out one laser, that one laser can pay for your base station. So a lot of doctors have great feedback once they listen to the Dr. John Harmon webinar. You can request that link to the recording from your representative. I would watch it. He has a very unique story of why he bought a laser and why he pretty much has a brain clinic. He's very passionate about helping people with anxiety and such. And then again, I can't really get into a lot of marketing, even though my background's sales and marketing. I have a webinar that I hosted that was an hour along, and it shows you a successful integration. It shows you what to charge, how often to laser, how to network with your medical doctors. I break it down a little bit better. So if you would like that webinar, it's called the Penny Marketing 101 webinar, and your representative can send it to you. So just ask them for that. And this just kind of breaks down. This has more to do with the rental program. I covered that in the marketing webinar as well. And these are just doctors, our speakers, and then James Schwartz and Mark Burdorf. These practitioners and doctors, including you, Dr. Guerra, have implemented the laser rental program, and it's just taken off. And just like Dr. Guerra mentioned, they have a waiting list. So let me get through to the end here. Erchonia, that was some March. I know this is the end of the month. Please get together with your representative and find out, even on April 1st, what some special pricing might be on any of our lasers. It doesn't take a whole lot to make that return on investment. I do find that doctors that add even the Accelerate, the EVRL or the GVL, they will have their laser paid off in the first 6 months to the first year. And if you're not getting it paid off, then you're really not paying attention to some of the things that Dr. Guerra and some of these other top doctors are doing. So I would really listen to their webinars and learn from them, because they are highly successful. And that's kind of why they are some of our speakers now. And then when you look at the base station, you can build the base station to whatever capacity you want. You can make it all red, violet. The Trident is one of each. I find a lot of doctors have their eye on that one, and they might, they'll use the GVL in the clinic. They might rent out the Accelerate, or like Dr. Guerra said, rent out the EVRL. I know Dr. Barry, he charges $300 a week for the Accelerate. He charges $400 a week for the EVRL and $500 a week for his GVL. But a lot of times doctors keep that GVL in their clinic. And again, one rental laser can actually pay for your laser system. A lot of doctors do financing. Verity, I'm not really going to touch on that right now. That's just basically a credit line for the patients to pay for a program of care, whether it's $500, $600, $1,000. If you want more information on that, we can get that to you. And then I find 85% of my doctors, when they do decide to get started, will say, hey, I want to do financing. I want to reserve my cash for other expenses in my clinic. So we do a lot of financing with NCMIC. They have deferred plans, so you won't have a payment until like June or July. And so that QR code, if you wanted to test the waters on a GVL, the GVL is $19,900, but get together with your representative and find out what kind of special we're offering this month. And then go ahead and fill out the application, send it to them, get pre-qualified. That way you can say, oh, okay, my payment's about $350 a month. One patient per month that pays for a program of care is actually going to pay off my laser. And we have another company, which is Reliant Capital. If you have any credit challenges, they're a great place to start. There's their QR code. They have a deferred plan, so there's no payment for 3 months. And they've also got another plan that's $99 a month for 6 months. That gives you a little bit of time to maybe watch my Marketing 101 webinar, watch Dr. Guerra's modules, get really confident and competent with your laser. And that way you can kind of defer the payment. They have another program that's $99 a month, and that is for a year. So again, if you have credit challenges or you just wanted to defer the payment, Reliant. And again, test the waters. You don't have to move forward with it, but at least you know what interest rate it's going to be. And it depends on time and business and what your credit score is. And then, of course, there is the slide I've been talking about, which is your representatives. Oh, I just lost it. And then it disappeared. I am so sorry. Let me try to find where did I go? Anyway, you can always reach out to me and I will find your representative. Let me find if I can find you that. No, I don't know. It disappeared. Just reach out to me. I can get your representative, and you can reach out to me at Erchonia. Or actually peaceneed@erchonia.com, or you can text me at 602-717-8321, and I can make sure that your representative is going to be in touch with you. They can send you that application. They can get you Dr. Guerra's modules or my Marketing 101 webinar. So with that, I know we kind of went over, Dr. Guerra. Every time we do a webinar together, we always go over, and I think it's because we have a lot to say.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
last but not least, is there any closing final things you want to say?
Yeah, I think just the big thing is if you're on the fence about you're getting one and you're focusing on just the total cost, chunk it down. It's like that old story. How do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. And that's what I did like 6 years ago when I went to the presentation and you were showing the Zerona. I didn't want to get a Zerona. I didn't want to buy a Zerona, but when I did the math and chunked it down to how much it was going to cost me, I saw that it was kind of, a no brainer. And that's the same thing with here. If you chunk it down to how many patients it would take you a week to at least break even, you'll see that's very, very easy to make this affordable. And it's actually going to generate a lot of income, just like you showed with the base station. You can have those lasers rented out, and they'll make you money to actually pay for your make your payment, and you're generating new revenue in the office every day too.
Yeah, good point. And where's your next seminar? I know a lot of doctors, when we hang up, they're like, I want to see more of Dr. Gaer. Where can I find him?
I am in Kalamazoo. I'm the main speaker at the Wisconsin Chiropractic Association event at the end of the month. And then next month, first week on the Cinco de Mayo weekend, I'm in Cleveland doing one of my standalone seminars for that weekend. I believe that's a standalone one. Yeah, in Cleveland. So I'm there. And then I'm in Montreal, Canada. I'll be speaking at the AK seminar up there in Montreal. So I got a busy time there. Yeah.
You do.
And then next month, and then after that, it'll be Myrtle Beach for the South Carolina annual convention.
Oh, fun!
I'm doing a lot of conventions this year. Yeah.
Well, I know you touched on the Zerona. I'm going to leave the doctors with just a thought here. The Zerona is another laser that we make that is non-invasive body contouring, but there's so much more going on with that laser than non-invasive body contouring. And we hosted a webinar together, Dr. Kirk and I, about why you should even consider that laser technology, because we always say statistics show 51% of your patients are already thinking about fat loss and weight loss. They're already coming in. I know you do no external marketing for your Zerona. And with a Zerona in a clinic setting, you can add revenues of anywhere from $10,000 a month up to $40,000 a month with revenue, and you can have your staff run it because there's an over-the-counter FDA clearance on that device. So if you would like to see that recorded webinar that Dr. Gaer and I hosted, Dr. Gaer does the kind of the clinical side of things and how he heard a presentation and he said, wow, I should have added this years ago. And then I do more of the business side and show you one successful open house, which we come out to do your presentation to your patients. Because remember, 51% of your patients are thinking about fat loss and they're going to go do something that's unhealthy. So we come out, we do the presentation, and the most that I've assisted a doctor in earning at an open house presentation with a Zerona is $49,000. And that could be you. You could pay off your machine. So if you would like more information about the Zerona, the same red wavelength that's in our red lasers we use for non-invasive body contouring, just get together with your representative. And again, I'm sorry that I lost the slide. Just go ahead and reach out to me, psneed, SNEED at Erchonia.com. Thanks so much, Dr. Gaer, for just sharing your experience as one of our clinical agents with the GVL. I know if doctors have any additional questions, they can reach out to you or the representatives. And again, we are so appreciative of your efforts and just, how much you teach doctors about what you're doing with lasers in your practice. So thanks for joining us. And if we didn't get to your questions, just get together with your representative. They'll connect you back with Dr. Gaer. And we'll see you at the next one. Everybody have a great rest of your day. All right. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.